Perfect.
Hello, how you doing?
I am very good. Good to see you. Good to see you. Simi is my co-host, and we are about to start. I have just started the recording. I will go back and share my screen in a second if I can figure this out. So, Simi, I haven't got the second monitor on, so I'm unable to see any chats once I start speaking. So please feel free to interrupt me if anyone's asking any questions, so I can kind of go through those questions as I'm speaking.
Yeah, no worries. I can see the other screen here, so that's fine.
Perfect. I'm just working off a Mac, and I'm not really used to it, so I'm still kind of learning all the little tips and tricks on it. All right, I'm sharing my screen. Simi, can you please confirm you can see my screen?
Absolutely.
Perfect. All right, good stuff. We're at the top of the hour. We're probably a minute or so behind, so it's important we get started early because we do have quite a lot to cover. So thanks everyone for joining. I see we've got around 25 people or so on the call. The numbers are expected to grow, and I think we're probably going to get around 100 people or so. We also will be expecting quite a lot of questions as well. So I'm going to try and go through the slides as quickly as possible without losing out any important information. But at the same time, I'd like to leave some time towards the end so we can cover any additional questions that we may not yet have addressed. Having said that, I'm going to start the work and kind of start talking about what today is all about. So why exactly are we here today? There's a few things that I really want us to leave today's session with, and that is for us to have a good understanding of why information is so important in the digital age that we're in right now. And subsequently, because of that importance, why is it essential that we secure it? Now, in order to secure it, what are the basic concepts? How do we as security professionals actually go ahead and secure our information? Now, subsequent to that, a lot of you will be asking, how exactly do I participate or do I become part of the workforce in the field of cybersecurity so I can start joining in developing the responsibilities to support the protection of information? We're going to cover a lot on that later on today as well. We're also going to focus a little bit about how CyberGs can help, and we'll talk about CyberGs later on in the session as well. And then we'll leave some time towards the end to actually cover any questions that you guys may have that we haven't already covered throughout the session itself. Okay, so to get this process started, I'm going to talk a little bit about myself, and then I'll give Simi, my co-host as well, a few minutes to also introduce himself, and then we'll get into the details. So I'm Opeyemi Orr. I'm the founder and CEO of CyberGs. That's kind of what I do by night. By day, I also work as a cybersecurity professional. I'm head of cybersecurity for a consular service organization. It's a global organization, and I have the sole responsibility for ensuring the security of our information systems across all the areas we operate and the government clients that we also provide services to. So if you ever needed to apply for a visa to go to a particular country, you would go to our systems and you would apply for your visa, and we would act as your proxy between yourself and the government client towards achieving your visas. That's what I do by day. Typically, I've been in the world of cybersecurity for many years. I've worked across many different roles in many different organizations. I've been a security engineer, I've been a security architect, I've been a security manager, I've been a compliance auditor. So I've held multiple roles, just all focused on the area of cybersecurity. I've worked in quite a lot of big and kind of medium-sized organizations as well. Before my current role, I spent many years working at PricewaterhouseCoopers, spent many years working at Accenture, many years working at BP, British Petroleum, Prudential, Research in Motion, also now known as BlackBerry, at the height of its peak, and so many other organizations as well. So I do have quite extensive industry knowledge across these different industry sectors. In addition to the practical hands-on experience I've gained over the years, I've also beefed that up with some theoretical knowledge as well by taking up quite a few industry accredited certifications. So the CISSPs, the CCSPs, and all the lists that you see at the bottom, and those lists are constantly growing, because you would find, as I would kind of spend a lot of time talking about, the learning actually never stops in the world of cybersecurity. I'm also an active contributor to a number of examination materials. So for some of you guys in the future that may want to take courses like the CISSP, the SSCP, I'm actively participating in the development of the examination materials for those as well. So, you know, it's something we can kind of discuss later on as well, where you guys may need some help on what the examinations are all about. We can kind of talk a little bit more about those. And many years ago, I also took a degree course in ITs, particularly computer systems and networks from the University of Plymouth. So I will, at this point, pass over the banner to my co-host, Simi, to talk a little bit about himself as well. Simi.
Yeah, Grant. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining. I'm Simi Ayeni. I work with Okwe and co-founder as well in CyberGeez. I currently provide services to a number of clients from financial services. I've worked with 2 of the 4 big banks, so to say, in the UK. I did some work for RBS, HSBC. I've also provided services to a number of financial services who are not banks. I've worked in insurance, prudential, oil and gas. I've provided services in the retail sector, public service as well. And what I do is to enable businesses to ensure that whatever service they're providing to the end customers or internal customers, that those services are actually secure. So I do provide independent risk assessment, architecture by training, by background, as well as providing governance, risk, compliance type of consultancy services. Again, I work predominantly these days on the cloud, mainly AWS, Azure, and also we've got some clients who are also dipping their feet into Google. So I also provide guidance and advisory services for Google Cloud Platform as well. For our clients out in the EMEA region, I help with some virtual CISO services to help meet compliance of various jurisdictions. And also I did spend some time in the university many years ago studying mathematics, and then moved on to some project management type master's degree. And as part of the industry, you have to show some third-party independent assessment of your skills. So again, over time, I did do some of these certifications, which are including CISSPs and the more relevant cloud specific certification for the different technologies. So you're in great hands tonight, and feel comfortable, share whatever questions you have. We've got time at the end, but just keep chatting through and we'll answer your questions as we go along. Over to you, Okwe.
Thanks, Simi. So I think that's a very important point. Today's session is all about helping you guys to understand a lot more about the industry. So I would really urge you guys, use the chat function to ask as much questions as possible. Simi has kindly offered to kind of help interrupt me as I'm going through the materials, and kind of just let me know when there are questions being asked on the chat window. So please feel free to kind of ask as much as possible. So going further, I think the most important thing is to help everyone have this established understanding of the importance of information, right? There is an absolute need to understand the value of the information that we have today and the need to secure it. Why? Because this information is actually powering every single thing that we do now, right? We all have social media apps, we all have banking apps, we all use smart devices, smart apps. We've probably all heard about Internet of Things. Everything now starts with the name I, so iPhone, iTabs, iCloud, and all these things. It all just is an indication that data is powering every single thing that we use and interact today. Okay, it's all around us, pretty much everywhere you look. It's the new crude. It's no longer the kind of black oil that everyone's kind of gotten used to in the past. Is no longer as relevant in the information age. When you look at the FTSE 250 and do an analysis of the industry sectors that a lot of those firms on the FTSE 250 are, you would realize that majority of those firms are actually technology firms, no longer what it used to be like 15 years ago, which was predominantly being dominated by oil sector industries. Not anymore. So it truly is the new crude. It's much more valuable than ever. Okay. But having said that, there is this acute need to secure it. And why is that? A, because of customer expectations of privacy. When a customer goes into a shop and they procure a device and they hand over their credit card details to say, hey, you can take the payment off of this, they're not expecting you, or you're not expecting them to tell you precisely to say, hey, can you ensure you protect my information? It's this unspoken contract between the seller and the buyer. So there's this customer expectation of privacy that's associated with it. And then in addition to that, there's also a lot of regulations and compliance requirements that organizations now have to abide by if they want to keep operating as a business. They must protect data that's in there, that's been allocated to them. So anytime they're capturing data from any source, they must ensure that the information is adequately protected. And if they don't, there could potentially be brand or reputational damage. There could be significant financial costs, and there could also be significant disruption to the business. And we're going to go through a few of these later on as well. Okay. Managing cyber risks now remains one of the biggest priorities for most organizations around the world. If you go back 15, 20 years ago, roles like head of cybersecurity or chief information security officer just simply did not exist at board level. But fast forward to 2021, pretty much every serious-minded organization today has those roles clearly established. They have significant volumes and significant amounts of money dedicated to maintaining their cybersecurity posture every single year. So it's now seen as one of the most biggest priority areas for most boardrooms all around the world. Okay. What do these famous brands have in common? I'm going to maybe pause for like 10 seconds and see if any chats come through. So Simi, I'm going to need your help to just let me know if anyone's kind of chatting. What do you guys think? So when you see all these brands kind of popping up on the screen, anything, any thoughts, any ideas?
So nothing's coming through yet. Any thoughts? Okay, so someone says these are industry leaders.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But that's not quite what I was looking for, but that's also something they have in common. So well done.
Okay, big numbers of customers. All right,
yeah.
Claudia says cyber attacks will lead security breaches.
Absolutely, and that's the key thing. They've all at some point been a victim of a cyber attack, and not just a minor issue. These are major issues that hit the kind of forefronts of major news networks around the world, right? They've been on the front pages of the BBC, the CNNs, all around the world. So They obviously process huge volumes of data, personal data, non-personal data. So imagine the impact of a cyber attack on these organizations, not just on the organizations, but on the people whose data is now being compromised. Those people could be targeted by other hackers. For example, if their username and passwords were stolen by hackers as a result of the cyber breach. Right, so those people could also then be attacked by other hackers using the data they've stolen from, for example, the NHS to attack the individuals in question. So cybersecurity for these organizations now is a significant investment. They don't mess around when it comes to their cybersecurity investments. So some interesting facts popping up on the screen. 90% of large organizations around the world have at some point in the past 2 years experienced a cyber breach. I'm going to let that sink in for a second. 90% of large organizations around the world. That's huge. Okay. In the UK, the average cost of a cyber attack to large organizations ranges between 2 and just under 4 million. Right? Every time there's a cyber attack. It could be more, but that's the average cost. And this is not per year. This is every time they experience a breach. In the UK, 40 billion was the cost of cyber breaches to the UK in 2019. $2 billion expected profits from ransomware. And we'll talk about ransomware later on as well. But $2 billion just for something called ransomware. Okay. And 43% of all attacks is orchestrated through computer viruses and phishing. Does anybody have any idea what viruses are? I'm sure everyone has. At some point, I'm sure 10, 15 years ago, viruses used to be a big thing on personal devices. So I'm sure maybe some folks on the call may have at some point had viruses on their local machines. But phishing is something we'll definitely talk a little bit more about later on as well. So cybercrime is now much more profitable than the international drugs trade. I remember watching the Hollywood series a while back called Narcos, about the life of Pablo Escobar. And they said at some point he was making over $500 million a day. That's how profitable it was back then. Now, if you think about it, cybercrime is now much more profitable than that. Those are all staggering numbers, right? Which really helps us understand the size of the challenge in front of us, okay? So this is a slide again, which kind of talks a little bit about the ongoing trends and context in the world of cybersecurity right now. We know the threat level is always escalating. There are ongoing escalation between the US and China, Russia and China, US and Russia. Everyone's just kind of flexing their cyber muscles at the moment. There are attacks going back and forth and left and right and all kinds of things going on, right? So the threat level is always escalating. This is even made worse by the fact that it's so easy now to go on the internet and just search for exploit kits and just hack systems around the world. You don't even have to be a professional. You don't even have to be an expert. There are people that have done the jobs for you and they just want you to come, download the toolkits, and you can use it to attack other people around the world, right? So these are an indication of the growing threat level. And then the technology landscape is also changing, right? Everyone is starting to adopt digital services. So back in the days, I remember 5-6 years ago, a lot of organizations went crazy, starting to do their whole digital transformation programs, right? So everyone is really getting to the point now where there is an acute reliance on digital services for everything they do. That again reinforces the need to ensure they have the right cybersecurity controls in place. Everyone is moving towards automation. Again, you're using more data, you're relying more on technology. And all of this is ultimately resulting in data volumes increasing and expanding and continuously growing bigger and bigger. And then there is also a challenging business environment. COVID happened, and now organizations have to respond to that. There's a lot of uncertainties across global economies. We've had Brexit here in the UK, similar challenges around the world. In the US, they had Donald Trump. Now it's Biden is starting to make his own policies. All of these are all affecting the business environment. So all these uncertainties are constantly impacting the cybersecurity trend and the context in which we as cybersecurity professionals operate. So just to show you guys how real the threat is, I will show you a tool that we sometimes as cyber professionals that we use to help us just understand what's going on around the world in real time. So here is a visualization of real world attacks happening this very minute. At the bottom of the screen over there, you're going to see some kind of technical looking data kind of scrolling through the screen. And all what this is showing is it's showing me in real time what attacks are happening, how those attacks are being executed, where they're coming from, and how serious those attacks are. So just looking at the screen right now, you can see quite a lot of attacks destined towards North America, and a little bit there happening in South America as well. And when I move closer, you can say, click here for more details, and then you can see the volume of traffic and some of the overall activity. And you can see even more as I'm speaking, coming through from China, coming through from Russia, and other parts of the world. Now, this is all real-time information as we speak. Now, you may be asking, how are they figuring this out? How are they getting this data? They're getting this data simply by relying on the architecture of the internet. So the internet works by having massive warehouses that act as data traffic junctions for all the data interactions around the world. So if I am sitting in my office as I am right now, and I'm interacting with a server in the US, that interaction has to fly through a number of hoops. And at the point where it gets to those hoops, they kind of unpack it, they monitor it for a second. If it's all clean, they let it go on its way until it gets to its destination. So at the inspection point, they can kind of filter out what's good, what's bad, and kind of make some certain decisions at that point. So those points are where they're able to assess who is attacking what, where the data is coming from, and where that data is going. And there's so many tools that we use to visualize this as well. So here's another sample one, but I want to show you this particular one, the Talos one. And again, oops, probably not this one. So again, they're all showing similar information, but with a different visual. So this is a much simpler representation of the similar information. So again, it's showing attacks originating from point A going to point B. And if you look on the right-hand side of the screen, you can also see how those attacks are happening in real time. Okay, so the threat is actually very real. These things are happening this very minute as we're speaking. Okay, any questions so far?
No questions. I think you can carry on.
Okay, perfect. So who actually are these attackers? You might be asking, and why are they attacking? Right? So there's a plethora of there's a range of different types of attackers, and there are different reasons why they all attack. It's very important to understand as a cybersecurity professional who these guys are and the motive behind their attacks, because that really helps us when we're defining our protection strategies to understand how we need to do this. Okay, so there are nation states or government-sponsored attackers. They usually attack simply because of political intentions or national propaganda. So a lot of you guys might have heard about China, might have heard about Russia, maybe North Korea, maybe the US, using cyber warfare as a way to kind of push their own agendas. So they would typically target organizations that may be working for other governments that they're interested in, just to steal the data that they may require and then use that data to carry out other kind of sophisticated espionage. And then there are those that are interested in just financial rewards, typically the organized crime. So the people that are in this for financial gain, right? They would be the ones that would typically email you to your business email, ask for a particular, ask for you to click on something in an email, pretending that they're your boss or something similar to that. And when you click on the email, it downloads something onto your PC, and all of a sudden, they're able to start interacting with your PC, potentially stealing data out of it. They are very interested in financial rewards. And then you have the terrorists as well. They're engaged in cyber warfare, and their number one motive, again, is political agenda. They have their own ideologies and beliefs, and they're trying to enforce that pretty much around the world. And then there are also hacktivists, not to be confused with activists, even though their motives are quite the same, because they're all fighting for social change. But they take the fight for social change onto the cyberspace, and they start hacking as a result of their own agenda from a social change perspective. And then there's disgruntled staff, and this is one which is super, super annoying for cybersecurity professionals like ourselves. Why? Because they already have access into the network. They already have access to sensitive information and sensitive data, right? So it's absolutely almost impossible sometimes to safeguard ourselves against disgruntled staff. So most organizations that have an insider threat protection program would spend a lot of time on assessing individuals and making sure they don't actually become disgruntled, or at the point where they get disgruntled, they're able to quickly isolate them and move them into safe boundaries so that they're unable to carry out attacks against the organization. So we've seen examples of disgruntled staff with the likes of Edward Snowden. I'm not sure if you guys know the story of the ex-CIA agents, an informant who decided to start leaking information and caused a lot of hassle for the US government as a result. And then there are competitors. Competitors just want to gain competitive advantage. So you can imagine the likes of Coca-Cola sending over maybe some internal spies to pose as an employee to work for maybe Iron Brew or 7-Up, just so they can get some of the recipes on some of the products that their competitors are doing. And then the final one I want to talk about is that kid in the mom's basement, that kid who has the super skills and, you know, very, very adept at playing with computers and technologies. And all he cares about is just showing off to his friends, right? He can cause as much damage as much as possible just for a laugh. And why? Simply because he can. He has the tools, he has the knowledge, he has the skill set, he has the fast internet, he has the iPad and the iPhone, and he's got all the resources that he wants at his disposal. Okay, so it truly is good business for the hackers, which also means there is a lot of opportunities for potential cybersecurity professionals because the business is just there. For the hackers, it's truly low risk and high reward. They can hide behind their PCs. They can masquerade their IP addresses, so the world doesn't actually know where they're coming from or where the attacks are originating from. Okay, there is ubiquity and affordability of hacking tools around the world. Like I said earlier on, all you have to do is just to go online, download the exploit kit. Someone's done the work for you already, and you can start running it and executing against different systems around the world. So it's dead easy to perform a lot of these security attacks. And what makes it worse is a lot of organizations around the world still have a lot of poor security practices. Okay, what do I mean by poor security practices? There's still lots of systems out on the internet today that are left vulnerable, they're left exposed, they don't have the right security controls, they haven't been patched, they're still using very, very weak passwords, they're still using insecure encryption algorithms. So there's a lot of these weaknesses out there today that makes it extremely easy to compromise organizational assets. Okay, so there's a lot of work for us to do as cybersecurity professionals.
Yeah, we just got a question pop through. It's round about the concept of ethical hackers. Is there something you can touch on briefly? And someone wants to know potentially what they could do, as it looks like they've got interest in that space.
Absolutely. So yes, we'll talk a little bit as well about the varying types of roles that we have in the field of cybersecurity later on. But now that someone's asking, so ethical hackers are simply hackers without necessarily the bad intentions. Okay, so they would go around on the internet, they would look for these kind of holes or these kind of gaps. When they find it, they will not necessarily exploit it, but rather they would submit it to the organization and maybe even provide additional information for the organization on how they should fix those findings. Some of these hackers or ethical hackers are also referred to as bug bounty hunters or just bounty hunters in general, which means when they submit these requests, they also ask for a reward back. So the organization can say, hey, thanks for doing this, we really appreciate it. Here's a $300 Amazon voucher. If you do find something else in the future, please do not exploit it. Please come to us first. Please do not report it out on the internet, because if you do that, others with a bad intention can actually exploit it. Ethical hackers also have professional responsibilities. So we, as cybersecurity professionals, employ them and they become penetration testers for us. And what's a penetration tester and what do? They simply do ethical hacks, authorized ethical hacks, find stuff and tell us how to fix it before the bad guy finds it. So this is a massive, massive industry. My penetration testers that I've worked with in the past earn a lot of money, right? I think the lowest person that I employed in the past was probably on around £750 a day. Okay, so these roles are, at least in the UK, from my perspective, there's so many roles out there right now. Okay, did that answer your question, by the way?
I'm sure it must have, but if there's a follow-on question, I'll let you know.
Perfect. Okay, good stuff. So let's go on. So attackers and how do they attack? So we've talked a little bit about attackers and the different profiles of those attackers. Now let's spend a few minutes talking about the different attack types. Okay, so a lot of you guys must have heard about malware or viruses in the past, right? So when you get those annoying things that kind of starts popping things up on your computer, it probably means you have some kind of adware on your PC, or potentially it could be a rootkit or a worm or a virus, right? There's so many different variants of what we call malware as cybersecurity professionals. However, I know to the layman, they normally just refer to everything as viruses, but there is a big difference between a virus, a worm, a rootkit, adware, and much more importantly, in recent times, a ransomware. Okay? Has anybody ever encountered a ransomware issue, maybe in their company or on their personal devices? Maybe just let me know if there's any yes, Simi, in the next 10 seconds or so.
Yeah, it's looking all clean. All right, someone said yes multiple times, actually.
Okay. So that right now is probably the singular thing that keeps me most awake at night, apart from the kids. Ransomware attacks are scary in the sense that you do something that appears fairly innocuous on your PC, you get an email from someone, you click on it, and then 10 seconds later, you see a picture of a skull, a blue screen, and everything is all locked up, and you can't do anything on your computer anymore. And it doesn't stop there. It has the ability to quickly replicate around your business and infect other PCs. And all of a sudden, your IT infrastructure comes to a standstill. And this happens. We're going to go through a few examples of these later on as well. So ransomware attacks right now, they are the bane of a lot of cybersecurity professionals like myself, the bane of our lives. Denial of service is also a very simple concept, which basically means it denies a user access to a service at the point at which they need access to that service. And this could be as a result of anything, even a malware, right? As long as you're unable to access a service, this is a potential denial of service attack. So imagine you're taking a taxi home, it's raining outside, and you've asked a taxi driver to pull over by a cash machine because you need to pull some cash out to pay the taxi driver. And you get to the last cash machine before your house, you put your card in, and it doesn't work. Now you have to take another 5-mile trip to get to the nearest cash machine. This is a classic denial of service attack. The system is unavailable at the point of need. And then it gets even more complicated with a distributed denial of service attack. A distributed denial of service attack is similar to a denial of service attack. However, this is orchestrated through the use of multiple systems, which we call bots or robots, right? We call them bots. Those multiple systems have been commandeered by a hacker and instructed to attack one single device or one single asset. So as an attacker, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to compromise millions of PCs on the internet. I'm going to compromise them, but I'm not going to do anything with those machines. The users don't even know they've been compromised. And then I send those systems an instruction and I say, hey, at 2 p.m. UK time, when I know people are going to be accessing their online banking applications for XYZ Bank, at 2 p.m., I need you all to send 10 packets of information to this IP address. And then the systems wait quietly, and at 2 p.m., all of them responds at the same time. And then the target device, sitting there quietly, processing its 50 traffic flows a second easily. It's there, processing everything. And then all of a sudden, it gets hit by 2 million traffic flows at the same second. So it's unable to respond, and it just collapses. So it crashes, and then it causes a denial of service, which is orchestrated through the distributed systems around the world. So that is a distributed denial of service. And then probably more popularly known are attacks like phishing, right? How many people have received phishing emails in the past? Phishing emails, anyone? 5 seconds. Those annoying emails that kind of come through, they ask you to download something or to click something so you can access an invoice, or your Netflix account is about to be closed, or your Amazon delivery is late. Click here to reschedule the delivery. How many people have actually received any of those?
Yeah, I think it's almost everyone's chimed in at this point.
Perfect. So phishing attacks are so rampant. Why? Because they're so easy to do. Everyone's got email access and everyone's got internet access. and everyone can send any email to anyone at any time. So phishing is such a difficult one to guard against. But as cybersecurity professionals, we always have to step up to the plate. Okay? And social engineering is also a type of phishing. So with social engineering, you're trying to manipulate someone into doing something they wouldn't normally do. An example of that is phishing, right? So imagine coercing someone into telling you their password. So you say to someone, hey, what do you use for your password? Do you normally use your first name or your last name? I normally use the name of my dog. And the person says, oh, no, I go a little bit more sophisticated than that. I use the name of my grandmother. Oh, what's your grandmother's name? And bang, you've got access to somebody's password, right? So that's a very simple social engineering attack, okay? And then brute force. Brute force is usually an attack type that is carried out against password-controlled systems. So when you have a system that you require a password to access, you can easily brute force that system if it doesn't have sufficient controls. And what do I mean by that? So my username is joeblogs@yahoo.com. Everyone knows what my username is because it's out there. It's my email address. What's my password though? I don't know. So the first thing as an attacker that I'm going to do is I'm going to try 111-111. Okay, doesn't work. 111-112. Doesn't work. 111-113. ABC 123 745 678 910. Right. So I'll try all the possible combinations in the dictionary. And this is called a dictionary attack. It's a brute force mechanism called a dictionary attack. And my hope is by the time I'm through, I would have at least gotten this guy's password. Now, you guys are probably thinking to yourselves, ooh, it's going to take eternity for this guy to be trying all these passwords one at a time. No, there are so many password brute force attack tools out there that do these things within microseconds, not 1 second. I'm talking about microseconds, quicker than you can blink, right? So it's extremely important when we're setting our passwords that we use extremely strong passwords. We don't use dictionary passwords, words that can be found in a dictionary, because they can be easily brute forced within microseconds, okay? And then the next one is just a system vulnerability exploit. There's a weakness in a system. So therefore, as an attacker, I'm going to exploit the weakness. For example, I deploy a web server. I have a URL, www.mycompany.com. However, an attacker realizes that there is a backdoor on that website. And by accessing that backdoor, I can gain access to any sensitive materials stored on that website. That's the attacker is simply exploiting the system vulnerabilities. Okay, and then there's a system sabotage. So I can have a disgruntled staff. Guys, remember the disgruntled staff we talked about a few minutes ago? So I can have a disgruntled staff who decides to sabotage an internal system. It could be something as easy as just going into the data center and unplugging a few cables. And by unplugging a cable in my data center in Reading or London or Manchester, I'm affecting services in China. And then the company starts getting lots of support calls from people trying to access the system, and they have no idea where the problem has happened. And that's a system sabotage. And then there are passive attacks, and passive attacks are also quite important because these attacks don't actually represent themselves to the person that's being attacked. So remember the example I gave a few minutes ago where I spoke about distributed denial of service attacks, where some systems are just there on the internet, keeping quiet, minding their business, but unknown to those systems, they've actually been hijacked to use in compromising other systems out there. And then there's a lot of others as well, like data leaks. Somebody leaves a USB thumb drive on a train. Somebody else picks it up and is able to access lots of sensitive documents. There's insider compromise. We talked about Edward Snowden earlier on. And then there's things like natural disasters. So imagine if a natural disaster happens in an area where your data center sits. Imagine if your data center gets flooded and all your data is sitting on those servers in the data center. And all of a sudden, you can't have access to your systems anymore. Everything is offline. And then there are terrorist attacks as well that have significant impact on the availability of systems. So remember when the World Trade Center went down, quite a lot of companies running their IT systems within the Twin Towers lost access to systems for days, sometimes weeks for some companies. Okay. And here's a couple of recent attacks. These are all recent. These are all things that happened in the last few weeks. Saudi Aramco, I think this was actually announced 3 days ago. They had an email phishing attack, which resulted in some sensitive files being exposed, and then a number of critical assets on their environment being ransomwared. So the systems got locked. The attackers have requested a 50 million ransom payment, but I'm not sure that's been paid as I speak right now. So these are all very, very recent incidents. And then did anyone hear about the Colonial Pipeline hack in May? I'm not sure if there's any Americans in the West Coast of the US on the call today. If there are, they were probably impacted by this, because this issue resulted in a significant disruption to the fuel supply to the entire US East Coast. So Colonial Pipeline is responsible for 45% of the oil supply to the US East Coast. Petrol, diesel, and jet fuel. The attackers were paid, they were actually paid $4.3 million in Bitcoin. However, as I speak, as at this morning, they've been able to recover 2.7 out of the 4.3 million. Kaseya IT is another big one. This happened a few weeks ago. This is particularly annoying for a lot of cyber professionals like ourselves, because a compromise of Kaseya resulted in a compromise of 18,000 companies around the world. So any company using Kaseya's monitoring tool, so they are an IT company, they provide a server monitoring tool for many other companies, 18,000 companies around the world. A compromise of that monitoring tool subsequently led to a compromise of other companies using that monitoring tool. And exactly the same situation happened with SolarWinds, the next one up on the screen. Exactly the same situation. SolarWinds similarly provide monitoring solutions for IT systems. They use a software on those monitoring solutions called Orion. A particular version of the Orion software got compromised, and then that software got pushed out to 27,000 customers around the world. And then the attackers kind of kept quiet for a few weeks, capturing data, passive attacks, like I mentioned on the previous slide. So they kept quiet for a few weeks, just capturing data. And then all of a sudden, security researchers identified these issues, and then it hit the news, bang. And it became such a massive thing. This was the height of my Christmas in December last year, because I spent half the time working with all my contacts across the different companies that we work with and work for, ensuring that we were not a victim of this particular attack. And then another very crazy one is JBS Meat Supplies. Now, this is particularly crazy because you think about meat supply or meat production companies. Why are they being attacked? That's the world we live in today. This is the world's biggest meat manufacturing company or meat supply company. They got hit as well in May of this year, and they eventually had to pay $11 million ransomware payment to ensure their systems were restored. So these things are happening as we speak. Every single day in my organization, I'm seeing all kinds of attack threats, attack vectors coming through, and I have a team of people just dedicated to working to ensure we remain protected against all these threats. Okay, so what exactly then does it mean when we're talking about cybersecurity? It means three things and nothing more. No matter how complex, no matter how sophisticated people may try to make it seem, it means confidentiality, integrity, and availability of our information systems at all times. Confidentiality is that property that ensures that my information is only available to those that need access and nobody else. If the confidentiality attribute of my data is compromised, then there is trouble. Any questions? Because these are very important concepts. Any questions? Am I making sense? Yes, no? Should I go on? Should I stop? Should I slow down?
Yeah, I think this might be something that a lot of people might be hearing for the first time, but I'm seeing a lot of people saying, yes, it does make sense. Please go on. So I think, yeah, carry on.
Perfect. That's good. All right. So confidentiality is a very important attribute. Similarly, integrity. Integrity just means that my information remains in exactly the same way, shape, and form as I've kept it. It hasn't been altered by anyone. That's simply what integrity means. If the integrity of your data asset has been compromised, it means someone has been able to either inject or remove data or altered existing data. A very, very crucial, very critical attribute, integrity, right? Imagine if you logged into your bank account 1 second and you had £5,000 in your bank account. And then all of a sudden, the integrity of your banking platform's information has been compromised. And somebody just removes 1 0 from that 5,000 or 2 zeros. Something as minor as that. Just take out 2 zeros from 5,000 and it suddenly becomes £50. Integrity is absolutely crucial. And availability is that attribute of information which ensures that I can access the information whenever I need access. These are the three important attributes that as cybersecurity professionals, we work day in, day out to protect. Nothing more. Right? A lot of others may come and make it sound as sophisticated as possible, but at the end of the day, every single thing that we do comes down to these three values. They are the basic tenets of cybersecurity. So now that you understand data and how important it is, you understand attackers and how they hack, you also understand why they hack, right? It's also important that you start to understand how organizations protect themselves. And again, it's easy, it's straightforward, but people may try and make it sound as complex or as sophisticated as much as possible. They use these three things: process and governance frameworks, deployment of a lot of technologies, right? Everything's now technology based. So you want to deploy the right technologies to protect your technologies. You want to automate as much as possible. And underneath of these two things, you rely on people. People are the backbone of cybersecurity methodologies across all organizations. Without people, your cybersecurity framework, your cybersecurity controls, it boils down to nothing. So we'll talk a little bit about governance framework. So governance frameworks just simply allows an organization to map out their approach towards managing cybersecurity. It's a simple methodology. You just agree together. We're going to align our protective methods or protective mechanisms against an established framework. So we say we're going to adopt an ISO 27001 framework, or we're going to adopt a NIST framework, National Institute of Standards and Technology framework, or we're going to adopt a PCI DSS approach because we process credit card data. Again, I'm not going to go into too much details of this. I'm just kind of glossing over it because we only have 2 hours or so. Okay, so they choose the right governance frameworks that helps them establish the right security controls that they will apply within their organization. So when they select a control like a security governance framework like ISO 27001, they start looking through the details, and ISO 27001 spells out detail by detail every single thing they must do. So it will say things along the lines of, you must have the necessary encryption capabilities in place. You must have the right data loss protection capabilities in place. You must have the right firewalls. You must have the right encryption systems. You must have the right network security capabilities. You must have, all these low-level details. It spells it down for them within the governance framework. And then on top of that, given the fact it's now defined for them all the different capabilities they need, you now need the underlying technologies. So there are technologies that apply across the board. For example, audit and log monitoring solutions. You just use those technologies to ingest data from pretty much every single thing on your network. And then the system does the analysis and it says, hey, we're under attack. You must respond to this issue because it's an indicator of a potential attack, right? So we have people managing these kind of technologies for us. And you have other technologies like identity and access management technologies, and you have threat intelligence technologies as well. So if you refer back to the dashboard that I showed you at the start of the presentation with all the kind of lines showing all the torpedo-based attacks from country to country, those are threat intelligence dashboards. And then we have network protection technologies like firewalls and routers and switches. Does anyone know what firewalls are? I'm gonna wait 10 seconds and I'll carry on. Simi, please let me know if there's any yeses or nos.
Yeah, we've got 3 yeses.
Perfect. So firewalls are just these lovely systems that sit at the edge of the network or sit at the edge of your computer and determines what traffic flow is allowed to come in or go out of your computer. Okay. So in addition to those network protection capabilities, we have a lot of others: switches, routers, intrusion detection systems, intrusion prevention systems, network proxies, vulnerability management, and wireless protection capabilities. Then we have a whole range of controls that protect us as we adopt cloud solutions, whole range. So there's encryption and all sorts. But nowadays, a lot of those protection capabilities are encapsulated in products called CASBs, Cloud Access Security Brokers, or some call them Cloud Security Access Brokers. And then there's data protection mechanisms like data loss prevention, file and folder encryption, email security services. There's internet security technologies like the anti-malware we spoke about. There's also encryption technologies to protect us as we use the internet. There's application security tools like application proxies and vulnerability management. There's endpoint protection tools. So a lot of you guys on your endpoints will probably have hard drive encryption solutions. So when you switch it on, you have to type in a password or a PIN. You typically would have an anti-malware solution. You may have a firewall. You may have DLP solutions as well. And then we also have as cybersecurity professionals management tools for managing our cybersecurity landscape. So you might have something called an Enterprise Governance Risk and Compliance Solution, EGRC. You might have incident management platforms. You might have things like Jira for submitting tickets, raising tickets. You might have things like ServiceNow, again, similar to Jira. You might have things like GitLab for raising issues. You might have GitLab for also use in deployments of software updates and things like that. So all of these are part of the plethora of cybersecurity technologies available today to help us protect our organization. All of these come under governance and rights supporting processes. So there is no point having a technology if you're not going to govern it, if you're not going to establish the rights processes to ensure that those technologies are effectively used. And all those technologies are managed by people. Very important. So that takes us to this very important topic about people. Any questions so far? I'm gonna wait 5 seconds for 3.
No, I think we can carry on. We've got a few questions that tie in that we can come back to later on.
Okay, perfect. So cybersecurity is really all about the people. It's an attack on the people that results in a compromise of an organization's asset. So it's usually because I've clicked on a link as a user within the organization that suddenly then results in my organization coming under attack. Or it's also because I haven't done the right things on a system and I've left the system weak, and an attacker is able to compromise the system simply because it's now been exposed. But it's also people that lead the charge on the cyber war front. So people like myself and potentially a lot of other people on the call today who may be interested in joining the workforce. So the workforce is actually made up of people with a wide range of skill sets and experiences. So contrary to the popular opinion, it's not always about people in dark hoodies, sitting in a dark room, kind of writing lines of code on a dark screen with green icons on it. No, that's usually what they do in American movies, right? Cybersecurity is actually made up of normal people like myself and Simi, some with lots of technical skill sets, some without technical skill set, but everyone has a role to play. So as you can see in the animation, there's this guys in the hoodie, and then there's normal business-minded people like myself, for example. Okay, so there's a plethora of transferable skills from other career paths. So I think I mentioned if you're a project manager, if you're a PMO, if you're a business analyst, if you're a tester, software developer, software packager, software engineer, there's all sorts of roles that you can transform into from a cybersecurity perspective. What is most important as an attribute is your business acumen, your ability to understand what the business needs and able to shape your thoughts to support what the business needs. It's no longer about computer says no, it's about what's logical. It's about being pragmatic as an individual such that you're able to help the business to identify the right controls that is commensurate with the risk that the business actually faces. Okay, so there's loads of roles all around the world, I believe, at least in the UK that I know very well. I'm sure there's a few people outside the UK on the call, but I know there's a lot of roles in cybersecurity pretty much around the world. And why is that? Because everywhere you look, there's always a hack in the news. So like I mentioned earlier on, companies are now starting to pay attention. They're starting to employ people, full-time workers or contract workers, and even ethical hackers that come in on a part-time basis to do a piece of work and then they get out. The pay is very good in the UK. For example, I know starting rates for cybersecurity professionals as a contractor, you'll probably be expected to earn £400 starting rate without much experience. As somebody with experience, you'll probably be looking at 45, 50K upwards. And then that grows very, very quickly as you gain more and more experience. So it's definitely a very exciting industry, and one I'm certainly happy I made the leap into over 15 years ago when I started working in cybersecurity. Like I mentioned earlier, there's so many roles. There's technical and non-technical roles. So you can see the huge diversity of roles that I've got up on the screen right now. So I'm just going to leave that up for like 5 seconds, and then I'll move on to the next slide. And if there are any questions in the meantime as well, Simi, please have the time to get.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, we do have 1 or 2 questions. I think one of them is around information security specialist, Azure administrator, Azure architecture. So the question is, are these still viable career paths? And is it something that you'll be advocating for someone to still progress on? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So security architecture is actually quite crucial as we speak. So security architecture is all about designing the solutions that will address particular challenges within organizations. So an architect will come through, assess the landscape, assess the threats, i.e. who are the bad guys looking to attack the organization, assess the weaknesses, what are the holes that these bad guys can use to attack the organization, and then make a determination based on all of these as to what sort of controls we're going to implement to protect us. And then they pull together design patterns, reference architectures, and then they work with engineers to bring those design concepts to life. And then when they're done, they pass it on to the operations guys to say, hey guys, now we're done, it's yours to operate. Security architecture is a very, very viable sector right now. There's loads and loads of roles out there looking for people with lots of experience. Architecture roles normally require quite a lot of experience because you need to have a good understanding of IT and IT infrastructure before you can start doing all these things that I mentioned. Thankfully, I've been an architect in so many roles in the past. I've done it over so many years, so it kind of comes naturally to myself. I was head of security architecture for many years in PwC before I left just over a year or so ago. So I do have quite a lot of experience around security architecture world. So definitely a viable industry sector. Now, to address the second part of that question, cloud. So I think the person mentioned Azure security or something along those lines. Cloud in general is also another big area. A lot of organizations are starting to deprecate their current local data center infrastructure and starting to move all their IT services, their workloads into the cloud. They want somebody else to worry about it. They don't want to be the ones worrying about it. But they also want to do that in a secure fashion. So what do? They hire cloud security specialists to help them with the transition, with the migration. So cloud security specialists will come through and look at the workloads they want to transition and help them define, should we be re-architecting these solutions so that it's more optimized for the cloud? Or should we lift and shift it in its current state and just push it in the cloud? If we're going to re-architect it, what sort of new solutions do we need to deploy from a security perspective? So all of those things come together, and the cloud security specialists are those that help organizations to secure that. Now, this question that this individual has asked helps me re-emphasize to you all that there's so many types of skill sets that's required in the world of cybersecurity. It's not just about being a pen tester. It's about, do you have cloud experience? Are you able to manage risks? Because you could come in as a risk manager. Are you able to, are you an ex-software developer, for example? Are you a test analyst, right? Because you could come in and do all sorts of things for us in this space. This actually helps us to visualize the different domains and the different role types that we have in the world of cybersecurity today. So you can see there are people that are responsible for threat intelligence, and all they do is just assess and go on journals and articles and webinars and help an organization to determine where their threats are coming from so that they're able to quickly come back in-house and address those threats. And then there are people that help with the defining of the security controls. You can see security architecture. There are people that operate controls, security operations. So you would see things like they will be the ones managing vulnerability management activities. They will be the ones helping to check that there aren't any data leakage out of the organization, right? So these guys are kind of like the drivers of the security tools. And these guys are kind of like the ones building those tools and making sure they fit for purpose. And then there are also others like risk managers that just come in and help us to assess our risks. So they look at all these things that we've been talking about and they just say, hey, this is such a big risk, we need to fix it. So they take it to the security architect, and the architect will say, hey, the risk guys have deemed this is a significant issue, so we have to deploy a new control. So what controls are out there? And they go off and they do their work. So there's plethora of roles. There's things like project management or program management. So all these things we've been talking about, they need to be project managed. So security project managers are necessary to also help out. And then when we establish a project, we also need BAs, business analysts. So we also have security business analysts that come through and help us with defining what needs to be done. So probably the most important part of the conversation for a lot of the guys on the call today is how exactly do we get into the industry? I'm a fresh starter, I've got no experience, I'm not in IT, don't have any technical background, I'm just fresh out of university or college. You know, I've been working in Tesco's for the last 20 years. That's all I've ever known. Where do I start? I always say to them, you start with the end in mind. And what does that mean? So what I've done is I've created what I call a representative sample of a roadmap for anyone who's starting the journey today. This works. I've tried it on so many people, and if they follow this religiously, it works. It always works. First step is you need to find yourself a mentor. Who's the person that you can talk to give you that career guidance? Someone who's seasoned, someone who knows the industry, someone who can help out with CV reviews, someone who can coach you through the application process, someone who can give you the mentorship that you need before you actually go in for an interview. And even further to that, someone you can talk to when you start the job. Like, hey, what's going on? My boss has asked me to do X, Y, Z, but what do you think? You know, what's the best approach for this, right? So you need to find a mentor. The mentor will then take you on to the next step where you review the skills that you have, and then you establish the right pathway. When I say the right pathway, you're trying to determine where exactly, what sort of roles will be most relevant for myself, right? Like I've said earlier on, there's so many types of roles, right? There's project management, BA, technical analysts, penetration testers, risk managers, auditors, governance, CISOs, heads off, whatever. There's so many roles. So which one's going to be ideal for me? So it's at this second stage that you make that determination. And following that, you define your training needs. What training do you need to attend? And coupled to that, what sorts of certifications are also going to drive you a step closer towards this pathway that you've established. And then when you've done those two things, I always say to people, create a future CV for yourself. This is not you at the moment. This is the you that you want to become at the end of your journey. people find this quite interesting, and they're like, why? I'm like, this is the CV that you use as a contract, a promise to yourself to say, when I look back in 4 months' time or 5 months' time, I must be every single thing that I've got on this CV. If you haven't, then you failed on that contract to yourself. And then you start the journey. You start attending the trainings. You take the certification exams, because again, you've promised yourself you are going to do these things. You start developing your hands-on experience. So cybersecurity, like I've mentioned, there's quite a lot of tools that are involved. I'm just going to take the charger for my laptop because it's telling me it's going to die off very soon. Just bear with me a sec. So there's quite a lot of tools in the world of cybersecurity. So it's always going to be very handy to have exposure to some of those tools. So tools like risk management for some people that may not be hands-on techies. Tools like SIEM tools, security incident and event management tools, for those that may be a little bit more techie. For those that are very, very technical, any sort of hacking tools like Kali Linux, they would find helpful. Metasploit, build out a lab for yourself, run those tools in the labs, play with them, and you're able to gain more and more experience. And then you go back to that CV to just validate, am I a step closer to what I promised myself at step 5? And then you can also take the opportunity to update that CV that you created for yourself earlier on. And then you validate every single thing that you're doing with your mentor. And then at the point where the mentor says you're good to go, you can start applying for jobs, still working with your mentor. You can start the interview preparations, still working with your mentor. You can get the job, but it doesn't stop there. You still have to carry on with the net. So learning never stops in the world of cybersecurity. Okay, so even after getting a job, you still have to look at additional certifications that you can take as part of your ongoing personal development plan. But again, when you're working with your mentor, all of these things you can develop with your mentor. So it never stops throughout your career. And at the time when you get to the age of retirement, you retire a happy man, because you've had a very, very fulfilled career in the world of cybersecurity. This works. This roadmap is absolutely important, and it works all the time. So I always advocate that people create a similar roadmap for themselves. There may be slight deviations. You may decide you're going to do certifications before you attend trainings. That's up to you guys. But the first step is establish a roadmap for yourself. And then how can CyberG's actually help you on this journey? We have a training program that obviously supports everything that I've just been talking about. We have a 3-day, very, very intensive cybersecurity training program. It's a cybersecurity professional. It's administered by myself and Simi, and sometimes we bring in additional third parties from outside to just give us the additional experience on the side as well. You get an exposure to a lot of cybersecurity tools using our cloud laboratory. On the cloud laboratory environment, we've installed and we've executed quite a lot of industry grade tools. So by using those tools, you're actively building on your own hands-on experience. So we make it as simple as possible so that even people without any technical experience can come in. We work with them to identify each person's area of expertise. What are the skill sets? What are the things, the transferable skills that these people have from whatever they've been doing till date that they can bring into the world of cybersecurity? And we help them establish where they should be heading to, the cybersecurity pathway. This training is absolutely crucial. It's different from others in the sense that it's not just going to be the instructor kind of reading off a PowerPoint slide. It's going to be every single person that's being trained having access to their own online labs and having the instructor in front of them, guiding them through what are the tools that you're looking at? What exactly do those tools do, right? Setting for you real life challenges that you can solve using those tools. And then the training is never enough, because a lot of people ask me, okay, once I'm done with the 3-day training, can I just go ahead and start applying for jobs? And I say, well, you can, it's your prerogative. However, 3 days training is not enough to get you up to the right level of somebody who's been in the field for 10, 15, maybe 20 years. So you still need the ongoing mentorship. So we also have a mentorship program that commences right after the 3-day training. This mentorship program also has a lot of career coaching, mentorship discussions. You have one-to-one times with your mentors. You can go through the roadmaps with your mentors. They will help you with the development of the roadmaps. They will help you define the certifications that you need to go through. They would provide for you access to all sorts of security resources and tools that we've already paid for, being developed by industry experts. You would have access to the online laboratories as well, so you can carry on playing with the tools. You would also have access to the CVs, and you would have the ability to review your CVs with your mentors. So whenever you create your pseudo CV, for example, you review it with them to say, here's what I'm going to promise myself, or here's who I promise myself I'm going to become in the next 4 months, right? So your mentor will be able to help you look at that and assess that and determine if it's fit for purpose or if it's moving you one step closer to your cybersecurity pathway, okay? You would also have all the right guidance about the examinations that you need to take, the certifications, all of those. And then more importantly, we're building a community of like-minded people that's been on the program, people that are currently on the program, that all come together and support each other. So even when you start the jobs, you're not going to be alone. You have a group of people all around you, and you can kind of ask questions direct to the group or direct to your mentors. So you can say, hey guys, we have this ongoing challenge today within my workplace, obviously not divulging any sensitive information, but you're able to kind of brainstorm and share ideas and say, how do you guys think I can solve this problem? What do you guys think are the right approaches? And then for people that are on our platforms and kind of supporting the real life work on the cloud labs, we're also able to offer them the eWork reference. So people can say to potential employees, we've been on the CyberG's mentorship program for the last 1 year or 6 months or 2 months. And again, that's something that we're growing together right now across the industry. Any questions for now?
Yeah, absolutely, loads. I know you touched on a few, but just for completeness, maybe I'll go through a few of those. And one is it possible for someone who doesn't have any IT background to actually get into cybersecurity?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So this is probably my most asked question. Like I've said earlier on, it's all about the additional attributes that you can bring. What are the existing skill sets? Are you a PM by trade? Yes, we do need PMs. Are you a researcher by trade? Yes, we do need researchers. I remember working at BlackBerry many years ago, and we had a team of over 20 people just dedicated to cybersecurity research, right? Are you a business analyst? We do need those. So whatever your skills are that you have, bring them over. Limited IT skills, that's fine. We would help you develop. The most important thing that we ask of you is to have the drive, the determination, and the will. It takes a lot of work. You have to dedicate hours. You're going to have to study. You're going to have to play around with tools. You're going to have to need the ability to be able to kind of research and learn new things very quickly, because it's a brand new world out there. There's so many things to be learned, but we're here to guide you through that learning process.
Yeah, so thanks for that. Just a follow-on question. Someone had asked, so I'll put all of this together. Someone's asking, they're into data privacy. What role should they transition into? And someone else has said, by training, they've come from a microbiology background. So your sciences, again, I think there's just that reassurance that the audience are trying to gauge whether this is potentially a possible leap from wherever industry they are into cyber. Any thoughts?
Absolutely. So the first one, asking about being a privacy specialist, absolutely wonderful. In fact, I like to encourage people with those kind of prior experience to get into the world of risk management, right? You drive into the world of risk management, it's not technical, but your knowledge and expertise, understanding privacy laws around the world, understanding core concepts of risks, understanding the GDPR, understanding the data protection directives, all of those things, you can bring it together and help drive risk management activities within the world of cybersecurity forward. You can go into the world of audits as well. So cybersecurity audits and assessments, those again are actual areas in the world of cybersecurity that you can dive into. And then the second part of the question, I think I probably answered some of that. But again, the core of it is whatever your skill sets, being a microbiologist, being somebody who studied accounting. I've had quite a few people come on our program from an accounting background. I've had a few people from legal as well. I've had people that spent 15 years working in Tesco's, and they've come on the program, and everyone has landed jobs out there in the industry, and everyone's doing really great. So again, the most important attributes are being dedicated, the will. I just cannot re-emphasize that enough. You need to have the ability to study, to research, to learn new things, pick new things up. I don't want a situation where people think this is easy money fast. No, it's not. This is a lot of hard work, but it's doable. Anyone can do it.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot for that. We actually have someone here who's said, I'm from a law background and doing their master's in cybersecurity. They're actually finding it really, really hard. And they're just on that cusp of saying, do I really want to go on with this or not? What's your thought process generally on comparing a typical master's degree, what CyberGist can do for you, experience versus formal 4 walls training, and just what other encouragement can you give to this person who's on our call today?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, actually. So I find a lot of the master's programs very, very theoretical. They're research based. They focus on some of the algorithms, the low-level algorithms that support things like encryption solutions, for example, but they are never practical. They don't dive into the practical implementations or practical uses of cybersecurity controls. I'll give you a good example. One of the cybersecurity MSc programs that I looked into many, many years ago at the King's College London, they actually had a whole module on encryption. And when I kind of unpacked that module, I found out they were looking into specific encryption algorithms and the details and the mathematical algorithms that power those encryption. That's great to know, but in the real world, nobody really cares about those details. People care about A, are you using an encryption algorithm? B, are you using a secure encryption algorithm? The mathematics behind it, not many people actually care about that in the industry. Now, the wonderful thing with the CyberG's program is it focuses on the practical application based on our experience working. It's not theoretical. It's not research-based. So it's actually very practical. It's, you know, real life problem solving. We're taking an understanding of all the usual day-to-day challenges being experienced in the workplace and making sure that the candidates are able to solve those so that when they actually land roles, they're able to tackle that. That's one part of the question. The other part of the question is around the struggles, right? And I'm not surprised. So you're coming through from a legal background where you've spent all your life kind of talking about legal stuff, and you've moved into a new environment where the focus is very, very theoretical. It's not practical in any way. So I'm not really surprised about the struggles. There are also going to be a few assumptions for anybody going on a cybersecurity MSc, and the assumptions are that they have a good IT understanding, a good IT background. In your case, that's not necessarily the case. So you might struggle with the transitioning because you're transitioning to something that is not practical, it's theoretical. So that's probably the explanation that causes some of the struggles. But again, let's kind of talk a bit more offline, see how we can help you, maybe with the mentorship or with the training directly itself.
Okay, fantastic. Someone actually wants to jump in and is asking about the types of tool sets and what we will cover in those 3-day training, but I can pretty much take that quickly.
Yeah.
And yeah, so on the training, we'll cover different tool sets that we do from different partners, the likes of vulnerability management tools. To cover just one or two, we've got the likes of Qualys, we've got SSL Labs, we've got a few other proprietary tool sets and SaaS-based, which is software as a service-based solutions out there and tool sets. We will also cover the softer parts, like we've got a question on how do you create policies. We will cover that. We'll look at the likes of what we've got from CIS. We'll pretty much break it down. We'll look at typical standards, your frameworks that are out there for your compliance, your governance, and give you a high level as well as low level understanding of those frameworks and how to actually turn those frameworks into usable policies within your organization. We'll touch on risk assessments, encryption, which we've just touched on. They are very at a high level. We'll touch on that. We'll actually play around with some tool sets. We'll work on things like password cracking. We'll touch on how you do hardening of endpoints. We'll actually do an assessment of servers and endpoint and see how secure or insecure they are. So we'll look at things around phishing. Again, we've got a SIM tool that you can actually play around with, which helps you understand when you talk about correlation of logs, and then again firewalls. You'll see all of these and you can delve in as much as you want or just appreciate it at a high level. And those are some of the things we'll cover in the tool sets that we've got.
Absolutely. Thanks for that, Simeon. So just add a little bit more to that as well. I think covering the tools is very important. And then in addition to that is the individual assessment, which allows us to understand your skills, your background, the types of exercises where you come to life, because we find that not everybody is equally attentive across all the exercises. Some spring to life when we start doing activities on risk. Some spring to life when we start doing password hacking. Some spring to life when we start doing audits, right? So all of these things helps us to assess individuals, and we can recommend for them the direct paths or the cybersecurity pathways that they should be going towards as well.
Fantastic. Thanks for that. I think someone's asking that this type kind of sounds like a one-size-fits-all course for everyone, irrespective of background and skill set or knowledge. and they're just wanting a confirmation whether this is true or not to help, and how they can help people who don't have any work experience.
Yeah, so I'll just go back quickly to what I mentioned just a few seconds ago around the individual assessments. So that is really what makes this course unique. So it's not about a one-size-fits-all course. It's about knowing how everybody reacts to everything that we throw at them and using that to guide them through their career journey. So, like I said, some would spring to life naturally when we start talking about compliance audits, some when we start talking about governance, some when we start talking about data loss, some when we go really technical and start talking about things like SIEM and firewalls and things like that. So it truly is all about using that to assess everyone. We start very basic. We introduce some core IT skills or some core IT concepts for those that don't understand IT much in general. And then we build on top of those really quickly as well. So it's a good exposure across the world of cybersecurity for everyone. So even when you do come across areas where you're not very interested in, if firewalls are not your thing, the good thing is now you have an overview of what firewalls are, and then you can focus on risk management. But if anybody, as part of your risk management work, talks about firewalls, you know precisely what they are, how they operate, and what the potential risks could be that you need to track.
Thanks for that. Okay, there's a question that earlier on, someone was trying to understand, when you look at mobile apps that keep pulling and analyzing user behaviors and pulling data, potentially without consent, is this also classed as hacking at all?
Potentially. So anything that results in an unauthorized access to information systems or information could be referred to as hacking. So if, for example, you look on your Android marketplace for chicken recipe, right? You want to cook chicken recipe and you look for an app and you see something and you install the chicken recipe app. Unknown to you in the background, the chicken recipe app is started to gather information from your phone and then send it offline to another database somewhere. They then use that information to ultimately attack you or attack others that they got their information from on your phone. That is an example of a hack. Now, the fact that you've been the one installing the chicken recipe on your system is actually, in the world of malware, is actually called Trojan. So you've pulled into your device a Trojan. That Trojan has now been able to exfiltrate information that has now been used to subsequently hack others or yourself.
All right, fantastic. I think someone's looked at the roadmap and is asking a question whether it's okay to exaggerate on your skill sets within resumes and CVs.
Yeah, I got to be careful what I say on this one, but I think a lot of people do it. I'm not going to say it's good, I'm not going to say it's bad, but a lot of people do it. What I say to people is, whatever you put on your CV, you must be able to back it up. If you can't speak French, don't write fluent French speaker on your CV, as an example, right? If you're going to exaggerate and put French on there, you must at least be able to have a basic conversation in French. The same with the world of cybersecurity. If you exaggerate your skills and you go in for an interview, they will quickly source you out. So what we try to do is we try to ensure that every single thing that you put on your CV as part of your future self-assessment is something that we know is realistic. So remember, again, we've done the individual assessments and we know where you are good at. So it's those areas that we help you to put on your CV, and then you work towards becoming that person, such that when you get to that point in time, you will not be telling lies, because everything that's on your CV, you can back it up. So that's always my advice to people. You must be able to back things up that's on your CV. But I know very well, I review CVs every day. I recruit people every day. I know very well that people do exaggerate. I'm not going to say it's good. I'm not going to say it's bad. I just know that it's done.
Fantastic. Thanks for that. Someone's looking for hands-on experience, and this person has listed a few different certifications from Network Plus, Security Plus, and the rest within the CompTIA space. They're looking for hands-on experience with SIEM tools, type of SOC tool sets, to SOC environment. Is this something that they can benefit from the training?
Absolutely. So within our lab environment, we have access to tools like Talos, FireEye, Mandiant, that are all SOC related tools. We have Qualys for vulnerability management. We have Nessus for vulnerability management, and a few others. I mean, if you want to remind me.
Yeah, we've got Alien Vault, we've got Event Logger, and the likes.
Absolutely, absolutely. So all of these are available within a online cloud laboratory, and people can play as much as they want within those tools.
Okay, thanks for that. Someone's just come back to the question around the potentially you downloading a Trojan from the App Store. What can we actually do? Is there anything, or are we reliant on the App Store providers to actually do all those assessments and make sure that through their governance processes, or is there something else we can do as end users?
Yes, absolutely. So security is applied using a concept often referred to as defense in depth. And this is something we go through on the training program. Defense in depth really allows you to apply multiple layers of security controls to avoid a specific cyber risk. In this case, the cyber risk is the Trojan. You want to protect yourself by doing a few things. A, relying on the original developer to ensure that their code isn't malicious, but you don't have control over that. Okay, so you then place reliance on the App Store to ensure that they're thoroughly screening and only accepting apps that won't necessarily compromise your information. But you have no control over that as well. So the final stage is to have the right protective mechanisms on your device. You have control over that. So you must be able to install something like an anti-malware solution that is able to quickly scan each app at the point where you're installing the app and tell you if the apps are clean. You have control over that. Another thing you have control over is the security configuration on your device. When you tune your device correctly, it's able to tell you or alert you if it detects an app trying to access your contacts, for example, or an app trying to access your call log, or trying to send texts on your behalf without your knowledge, or trying to take all your contacts and put it in another repository and send it offline, or an app trying to communicate over your internet connection back to something else that you're not aware of. So your configuration on your device can actually help you block those. So I'm sure at different points in time, you guys might have seen an alert like, hey, this app is trying to track your location. Do you want to enable or do you want to disable it? So those are simple things that you can do. So generally, the idea is defense in depth, multiple layers of security, all with the sole aim of reducing cyber risk.
Thank you very much. Someone would like to know how the mentorship program works.
Okay, good stuff. So I'm going to dive into that a little bit. So I talked about the mentorship program. So we typically allow people on the mentorship program once they've done the training, because like I said, the training is never enough. 3 days is not enough to acquire 15 years of skills or what other people have done for 15 years. Okay, so it truly is about having somebody as a mentor who's there to guide you through every step of the way. They'll help with the CV reviews, they'll help with determination of the certifications that you need to take, the resources that you need for your study, your self-study, your access to the lab environment. All of that stuff is provided as part of the mentorship. The mentorship program comes at a cost of £119 a month, every month for as long as you're on the program. The training itself comes normally at a price of $899. However, we're offering a special promo right now for the first 10 people to sign up after the completion of this course. Anyone who is interested gets a 15% discount if they use that promo code on the website. So those are the costs for the mentorship and the training program themselves.
All right, fantastic. So, yeah, okay, yeah. So someone's asking about the offers, and you're saying, could we email this out to them? Yeah, I'm not. That shouldn't be a problem at all.
Absolutely.
Yes, someone's asking, from the candidates who've gone through this training, how many have passed and how many have been able to secure roles and jobs within cybersecurity?
Absolutely. So we've been at this since 2016. We've had quite a few people since then. I'm not keeping tabs, I'm not keeping the numbers. But generally, within the first 6 months, we know roughly around 30% of people within 6 months land a role. And then a lot of people move on beyond 6 months, probably into 1 year before the land roles. But again, the most important thing is the determination, the will from people to land those roles. The average number of the people that we feel are most dedicated on average, within 3 months, they get a role. So whenever Simi and I engage with a candidate and we assess them and we know that they're at the right level of determination, typically between 3 and 4 months, they land a role. Those are the people that are most ideal. And that is why I've been kind of mentioning it a few times, that there is a lot of work involved. We're going to guide you, we're going to help you through the journey, but a lot of that work will be done by yourself. You're going to be going through lots of materials. We're going to provide you access to videos. You have access to the labs. You get guided tours of some of the tools that you need, just to increase your hands-on expertise, so that when you ever have to stand in front of someone during an interview and talk through those skills, you're saying it from the perspective of somebody who's been there and done that, not someone who's read it in a book.
Yeah, so I think thanks for that. Someone's trying to understand whether they will get an appreciation of how to protect themselves practically, to say, okay, how to set up their firewalls, how to make sure that the endpoints are secure by coming on this course. And I think, yeah, I can easily cover that. Yes, you will get practical knowledge. You'll be able to understand how phishing works, what you can do to look out for potential phishing. You understand encryption. You understand how to set up your own system securely, whatever device, your mobile devices. You'll get that appreciation. You'll also understand quite a lot more when we talk about threat modeling and how to ensure that the organization that you'll be working for is secure, and also yourself, starting from just your own computer to your own internet router or access point, as we also call them, to make sure that all those are secure. So you will appreciate that. You will understand how to do that by being on the course as well. And someone's asking, for me to work within application security, do I need to be a pen tester for application security?
So, yeah, so that's a great question as well. So within the world of application security, it's all about being able to review applications, the code base, and being able to determine where there may be issues. a lot of this is already automated. So we have quite a lot of tools like Nipper, like Burp Suite. Again, we do provide all of these during the trainings and the mentorship scheme. These tools are available to help you do those assessments. So even those without the right technical skills can come in and place an interest in application security and get expertise on those tools. I mentioned Metasploit earlier on as well. So those are sample tools that you can use as part of gaining an experience in application security. Specifically for that pathway, it helps if you're a software developer or somebody with software development experience in the past. But again, it's something that people can pick up with the right level of determination and support from us.
All right. Thank you very much for that. Someone would like to know the course and whether they've got access to the tools and resources past the 3 days.
Yes.
Any access?
Absolutely. So upon completion of the course, we normally leave the tools and the labs available for the users for 48 hours. Once 48 hours elapse, then access reverts only to those on the mentorship scheme. In the past, I've had people reaching out to say, hey, I still need some help here and there. So we are sometimes flexible just to accommodate requests, because sometimes people say, hey, after the course, I'm sorry, there was a lot of information, so I needed time to digest it before I could go back to the labs. And by the time I got back to the labs, access was already revoked. And we're usually quite flexible about those things. But the general rule is we leave it for 48 hours to allow people to still practice and train. And then after that, we revoke access only to those and provide it only to those on the mentorship program.
Okay, fantastic. And someone's asking about the slides that were shared today. Is there any possibility for us to get that across?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. We'll get those across after the presentation.
Okay, and yeah, I think we've already covered this to say what's the best way to get a job.
Yeah.
Yeah, so again, it's a lot of determination, a lot of self-motivation. You will need to cover new material. Again, you have to be open. You have to be, you need to want it. You have to be inquisitive, and you need to be open to new materials, consuming those new materials, understanding those new materials. But definitely, we're here to definitely help you on that journey.
Absolutely.
So someone's just asking, if we go on the mentorship program, do we go on the course as part of the monthly fee? All right, so I can cover this. So normally the training comes before the mentorship, and we only open up the mentorship to those candidates who have passed through the training, because we expect you to have a level of understanding before you come on the mentorship program. So the expectation is you'll have done the training. So the mentorship is post-training, so it's not the same fee. So there's a different fee for the training, but post-training, if you choose to, you can come on the mentorship program, but it's not compulsory. However, the mentorship is only open to candidates who pass through our training. Yeah, that looks like the last question for now. In case anyone wants to ask any other questions. Okay, yes, Vic, we do issue a certificate on completion of the training program, so no issues at all.
Absolutely. And just to add to that as well, we didn't really cover that today, but we also cover certification exams. So, but that is usually upon request. So we work with companies right now who may want to bring in maybe 10 people within a team to do something like a CISSP or SSCP or Nexus, a SACA certification and things like that. So those are also possibilities for us as well. I know we didn't cover that earlier on, so I just thought I should mention it. In anticipation of some of the questions, we also did pull together some of our frequently asked questions, and I thought we'll just run through it. We've got 5 more minutes, so we can just quickly flip through this and see if there's anything that we missed. How long does it typically take to get a job in the field? We've already covered this. So in my experience, the most determined, the most willing people, we normally find roles for within 3 to 4 months, and sometimes up to 6 months. But again, those are the people that I know take this really seriously. They're the ones kind of aggressively working with their mentors because they know precisely what they want and they're out there to get it. What sort of habits do I need? We've covered this already as well. We've said you need to be very, very business-minded. You need to be inquisitive. You need to be interested in understanding how technology works. You cannot protect security technologies properly without a good understanding of how technology works. How much can I expect to make as a new joiner in this field? Roles, again, they vary based on the skills, the industries, the location. In the UK, typical starting rates are around £400 for a new joiner. Full-time rates again starts around 45k, 50k range per annum. Experience requirements. I don't have much IT experience. How can you help? Again, we've covered this extensively. We try to make things as simple as possible. We introduce IT concepts in a very simple, logical, easy to understand manner. So even people that don't have the requisite skills can come in and quickly grasp those, and then we move on to how we protect those technologies. Okay, do I need to be a technical person? I think we've covered this already. There's so many different types of roles available. So everyone's welcome, everyone's invited. There's more than enough to go around. There's an acute shortage in the UK for cybersecurity roles. So if you are in the UK and you're at a career junction right now, you're not sure where to go, this is certainly an area that I've been encouraging people to go into. What certifications can I take and how can you guys help? There's numerous certifications out there from ISC Squared, from ISACA, from EC Council, from so many different organizations. What we do as part of the training, as I mentioned before, we assess individual skill sets and we use our assessment to put people on pathways. Those pathways will then shape the certifications that we recommend for those people. Am I on my own after getting a job? I might still need some help. Absolutely not. That's what the mentorship program is all about. When you join and you get a job, we don't say goodbye. As long as you still remain registered, we're still supporting you. You still have access to the community around you. You still have access to all the resources. You have the labs. You can try out problems or things that you're trying to solve in the workplace. You can go into the labs, give them a try. You can speak to your mentors and they'll be more than happy to guide you through whatever the challenges are. Do you provide training outside the UK? Absolutely. So everything we do is now done online. So pretty much anyone can come in from anywhere. Are there people outside the UK on the call right now? Any yeses? Simi, just help me check it for the next 5 seconds. But yes, the answer to this question is we do provide training online, so pretty much anyone can access from anywhere.
Yeah, just to confirm that we do have people from outside the UK.
Perfect. Okay, good stuff. Why should we train with CyberGs instead of others? So again, we've covered this already. We are practitioners. We're not theoretical preachers. We're giving it to people precisely how it's done within the enterprise workplace based on our experience. So everything we do or everything we teach is based on experience. It's not based on what's in a book. How do I sign up? And easiest way to sign up is cybergs.com. You can also send a WhatsApp message to the number on the screen. I'm going to be sharing the slides. So if you're interested, certainly please feel free to get registered ASAP. Like I said, there's a 15% discount applicable to the first 10 people that use the 15% off discount code. So please do register as soon as possible if you are interested. Okay, and I think that's the end. So perfect timing. I think it's at the dot of 9 o'clock. We do hope you guys have found this very helpful. We also do appreciate some feedback. So if you do have some feedback for us, it's its-us. You can see that on the screen right now, its-us @CyberGeez. We would really appreciate the feedback. We hope we've been able to provide you some exposure into the industry, and we certainly would look forward to hearing from you guys, particularly if you're interested in joining our training program going forward. At this point, I hope there are no final questions. If there are none, I would say thank you very much for your time and speak soon.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Cheers.
Thanks all.
Yeah, okay, your mic is still on.
Oh, okay.
You'll be here and there.
Okay. Yeah, I don't want to end it yet. I want to see
Exactly.
in case any chats are still coming through, so I've left it on, but I'll end it in a few minutes.
All right. Great session. Well done.
Yeah, thanks.